Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world, and welcome, welcome, welcome to this episode of Hit Talks Live. I am so pleased to be on our 11th episode here now, and Hit Talks Live, people say to me, Vicky, what is it all about? Well, it's about hope. It's about inspiration and it's about transformation. And it's where we bring together 8 amazing people from all over the world, speaking for 8 minutes each on hope, on inspiration, and on transformation. Messages from the heart. And the one thing that is different about Hit Talks as well is that I do not know what any of these speakers are going to be talking about. They don't know what each other's going to be talking about. You know, there isn't any pre-planning. As one of our new guests messaged me and said, you might have seen in my posts, that each speaker is like an instrument and you bring them together and it's like an orchestra of divine music. And I love that because every single person has a message to share. Every single person has some hope, some inspiration, some transformation, and some wisdom inside of us. And Hit Talks is here to share that with you. So we're really pleased to have you with us. And we have an amazing lineup of speakers, as we do every single episode. And every single one is different. That's why you need to keep coming back. Keep coming back and joining us live. Keep watching the replay and being part of the Hit Talks community. And I'm really excited to invite again our guest of the day to start this episode of Hit Talks, Dr. Sanjiv Chopra. So he's been on many of the episodes with us. And Dr. Sanjiv speaks just from the heart all at the time and just pure inspiration. As I say, from Harvard Medical School, he's not just a very, very dear friend, but he's also just one of these people that has so much wisdom to be able to share with us. So much wisdom and so much knowledge purely from the place of hope, inspiration, and transformation. So thank you so much, Sanjiv, for being back with us for this episode. And I'd like to give you your 8 minutes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so very much for that kind introduction. I'm honored and privileged to be on Hit Talks again. And I was reflecting on what to speak about, and then I thought I should speak about speaking. So I'm privileged to run dozens of continuing medical education postgraduate courses throughout the country and abroad. And we embed each day a keynote. And several years ago, I invited a gentleman by the name of Captain Charlie Plum to be a keynote speaker. We had 500 physicians from 45 countries in attendance. He gave the first talk early in the morning, 7:30 on a Wednesday. And he got a standing ovation. He was 76 years of age. He gave about 75 talks a year and he charged a fortune. So after his talk and after the wonderful applause and standing ovation, we retired to have coffee. And I said to him, I said, Captain Charlie Plum, you have taken acting lessons. And he turned to me, he said, Sanjiv, as you know, I give 70, 75 talks a year. But on the weekends, I'm back in California in Santa Barbara where I live. There's a Shakespearean director there, and I still take weekly lessons from him. So it inspired me to increase the level of my speaking. I developed a talk with a colleague, John Sharp. He's a psychiatrist and author at Harvard Medical School. And we've given this talk now at Harvard Medical School, at the University of Massachusetts Medical School as well. There's a wonderful book by Miguel Ruiz. It's called The 4 Agreements. And the 4th agreement is always do your best. So even if you've given a talk and gotten a standing ovation, you and I can improve it. And we need to work on it. Steve Jobs once said, storytellers are the most powerful people in the world. Life is storytelling. Leadership is storytelling. Connecting with people is storytelling, animation. So use your hands. I call it HIPS, another mnemonic or within a mnemonic, HIPS. Use your hands. Vary the intonation. You can't be speaking in a monotone. Okay, the P Now I'm going to say a phrase, and then I'm going to repeat it slightly differently. Adversity is a terrible thing to waste. Second iteration. Adversity is a terrible thing to waste. Now here I changed the intonation for adversity, but after I said adversity is a terrible thing, I paused for a second. That's the pregnant pause. There's an expectation by the listener. Sometimes they even lean forward. What is he or she going to say? That's called the pregnant pause. It's very powerful. Say it again. Adversity is a terrible thing to waste. Adversity is a terrible thing to waste. Right? Much more powerful. And also the use of judicious quotes. Now, one of the greatest commencement speeches ever given at Harvard was by J.K. Rowling in 2008. And she embeds within it a few quotes, but she also concludes with a wonderful quote. And at the end, she says the following, and I'm going to read it. So today, I wish you nothing better than similar friendships. And tomorrow, I hope that even if you remember not a single word of mine, you will remember those of Seneca, another of those Romans I met when I fled down the classics corridor in retreat from career ladders, in search of ancient wisdom. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. Robert Waldinger at Harvard on what makes a good life. The most important lessons from the longest study on happiness that is still ongoing. It's gone on for almost 80 years. And he also quotes with a wonderful quote from Mark Twain. Mark Twain had a different quote, not the one Robert Waldinger used. One of my favorites. He said, the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. Each one of us has a singular purpose in life. So I want all of you, my greatest wish is that you be happy, that you're living your purpose in life, and that you lead good lives. Rick Nahara, who is a good friend of my wife Amita and Vicky, and he and I are actually right now in the middle of writing a book. And the book is called The 7 Laws of Speaking and Writing. And in it, we have embedded some of what I talked about. So thank you everyone for listening to me. And I'm looking forward to learning and listening from all of you. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Sanjiv. Thank you. And I love the quote that the day that you find out why. And if we ask ourselves, aren't we always searching and thinking, is this the right path? Is this what I should be doing? And should I be with that person? Should I be doing this? And, you know, there's always the journey of, let's say, feelings. It's always the journey of expansion, and it's also the journey, as I say, of hope, inspiration, transformation. Because when we are seeking, and then we have these inspirational messages and transformational messages, and just sometimes these little snippets, that they are actually here to help us. And when we talk about the flow of going on to the different speakers, and every single person that's part of Hit Talks is part of Hit Talks because of the kind of person that they are, because of their soul, because of their messages, because of what they want to do in the world. They're not here to position, they're not here to sell, they're actually here to actually spread hope, inspiration, and transformation. And this next guest, I actually met this gentleman about 5 years ago. And you know, when you connect with somebody, and it doesn't mean that when you connect with somebody that you have to be in each other's pockets every single day, every single month, or every single year. But when you reconnect, however long that is, it's as if it's you've never been apart, and you just kind of click it off. And this is what I love about when you make spiritual connections, and you make connections with people that you know are actually on the same journey as you, but also on the same journey as actually trying to not just transform themselves, but be a part of transforming others. And with the Hit Talks growing and growing and growing, I reached out to Bill and I said to him, Bill, oh my gosh, I said, you need to be part of Hit Talks. Can you remember the fun that we had in Fiji? And so it's really good to actually have people from all over the world. So Bill is not in Fiji now at the moment, he's in New York. And, he is a business master, but he's also written a book. He's also doing some work with his wife, they've been together for 20 years. So there's so much synchronicity with the people that you connect with as well. And I'm really excited to actually hear, Bill, your story of hope, inspiration, and transformation. Thank you so much for being with us. And I now give you your 8 minutes.
Thank you, Vicki. It is an honor and a privilege to be here today. And it was an absolute pleasure meeting you in Fiji. That was one of the most fun times in my life, working with Tony Robbins, the group, the organization, and just looking at how we change our own life and wealth mastery. So thank you very much. And I'm honored that you were reached out and we were able to connect today. I want to talk about happiness. And I've been spending a lot of time with happiness, and it's funny that Sanjiv had mentioned that as part of his talk, because I believe that the key to happiness is gratitude, and I've spent a lot of time focusing on gratitude. And this is actually ancient wisdom, right? That Cicero says that gratitude is not only the greatest of all virtues, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but it's the parent of all others. And so my focus has been, okay, so I understand how to be grateful for the things I love in my life, my wife, my kids, my career opportunities, things of that nature. But how do I be grateful for it all? And that's been the struggle that I've been thinking about and what I want to share with you today. Because what I realized was if I truly want to unlock happiness in my life, I get to be grateful for everything, not just the things I like. And so I'm going to share with you the most challenging story that I have. It's one that allows me to really talk about the outer boundaries of gratitude and how to actually be grateful for it all. And what happened was about 8 years ago, I was with my family. We were in Bend, Oregon, and we went to a buffet it was a brunch for Christmas. And it was 3 days before the holidays. And when we were about to enter the restaurant, my brother-in-law asked me if I would speak to his son, my nephew, about dating. And I said, sure, absolutely. One of my favorite topics. And as we got to the restaurant, I sat down next to him and I started like tunnel vision, focusing on that conversation. So I was really surprised when my brother-in-law jumped up and said, I think that's Ryan. Now, Ryan's my youngest son. At the time, he was 7 years old. And I was like, what? And I was just sort of out of context because I'd been talking with him about dating and suddenly my son, what's going on? And he runs up the stairs. And so I follow him and I say, excuse myself, my nephew, and I follow him upstairs. And when I looked across the way, what I saw was my 7-year-old's lifeless body on the ground. As a parent, there is nothing more traumatic than a scene like that. I didn't know what happened. I hadn't heard anything. And all I could see was my son not okay. And so I ran up to him and I said, Ryan, are you okay? Ryan, nothing. I picked up his lifeless body. And in that moment, I went to lean down to hear if he was breathing. And immediately, he starts yelling. His eyes are rolled back. And the first thing was, oh, thank God he's not dead. I didn't know what happened, but at least he's alive. He kept screaming. He kept screaming. Ryan, are you okay? What happened, Ryan? What's going on? Where are you? What's happening, Ryan? Nothing. And immediately I snapped into attention and I thought, you know what, I got to do something about this. I got to get him to the hospital. So I picked him up and I started going. Now this time, the entire restaurant had come to a halt. No one was doing anything. All eyes were on us. People had come upstairs to see what happened, what was the commotion. And I have got my son and I'm going for the door, and a doctor grabs me by the arm and says, "Stop, I'm a doctor. What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm taking my son to the hospital." He said, "Put him down." And he had such authority in his voice. I followed his instruction. I put him down. I was looking for a doctor. Here's doctor. He said, "You know, if you don't know what happened, you might be making the injuries worse." You know, and so I started hearing people talk about around me that he had fallen. And what I found out later was that he'd fallen 18 feet through a balcony onto a hardwood floor. And the whole time I'm trying to get his attention, that finally the paramedics show up and they start asking the same questions. Right, what's your name? Where are you? Do you know where you are? What day is it? Nothing. All his whole answer the entire time was just a constant blood-curdling scream. No one could satisfy it. We couldn't figure it out. So they put him on a stretcher. They took him in the ambulance. And the whole time I'm going to in the side of the ambulance, I hear all them asking the same questions. What's your name? What day is it? How are, you know, what happened? And all he responded was with just screams with his eyes rolled back. And I remember in that moment, I prayed. And I hadn't prayed in many, 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 many years. And I said, "God, I don't know if you're even there. I don't know if you exist, but if you do, please hear me, whatever it takes. I just want my son to be okay." And it took 20 painstaking minutes to get to the hospital. And as we got there, we were met by the pediatric surgeon. And the pediatric surgeon came out, asked us all the same questions. We told him that he fell from a balcony. We didn't know what happened. We didn't know, he just was unresponsive. And so he asked the same questions. What's your name? What day is it? Do you know where you are? And all he kept doing is yelling and screaming. And finally the surgeon asked, "Are you excited for Christmas?" And he said, "Yes." And in that moment, I could breathe again. My son was going to come back to us. Because up until that moment, I didn't know what had happened. But now he at least had someone was in there. We could tell that he was there. And so we spent the Christmas in the hospital, and he recovered. And it turned out that he had a ruptured spleen, a broken arm, but he bounced back, and everything was going to be okay. Now, it took me a long time because my focus has been what a terrible father I was. How could I have not known? How could I have let my kids run around in a restaurant? I was even blaming the restaurant itself. How could you have a balcony that a kid can go through? How could they even get up there? There was no sign. But what I realized was that blame was just pinning me into this story of being a victim. And I was beating myself up and judging myself for being a terrible father. And it was only after I could acknowledge the truth of what happened and to forgive myself, to give forth the past and understand that I did the best I could with what I had. And that was my focus. And in that place, I could begin to be grateful for this experience. Why? I'm grateful because I never take 1 minute for granted with my children, my family, my friends. It gave me a new lease on life. And I'm reminded of, I'll close with this quote. A man once told Buddha, "I want happiness." And Buddha replied, "First remove I, that is ego. Then remove want, that is desire. And now all you're left with is happiness." I am grateful to be here with all of you today. Thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Oh, I love you, Bill. Thank you so much for sharing that, and just for sharing from the heart, because, you know, we did have the conversation beforehand, and as we say, we share from the heart, but not really knowing what we're going to talk about. And, you know, when you said that it was funny that Sanjiv spoke about, you know, happiness and gratitude. This is what I love about it. It's all synchronicity, that everything flows coming through. And as you say, when you're talking about beating yourself up about not being the greatest father, and I'm sure there's everybody here that's on the replay, here's on live. We've all been there as a mother or a father, and listening to your story and listening to knowing that we're all in the same boat. And I know that Michael's left you a message in here as well. Michael's going to be one of our speakers on the next Hit Talks as well. And again, he's got an amazing story that, you know, especially when we learn from our children. We learn, you know, our children are our teachers. The people around us are our teachers. And this is the thing, is when we're able to open ourselves up to the wisdom of not just the people on Hit Talks and not just you know, our coaches and our mentors, but also the, you know, the family of members around us, our family and our friends. And I would use the word, it's funny when we go on to the next speaker, but I'm not going to use that word, because what I mean is synchronicity when we go on to the next speaker, because again, the people that's connecting with Hit Talks that actually want to share their story have massively inspirational messages that are really changing and impacting the world. And when I first met Karen and I heard Karen's story, and I know that she's perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps Karen's going to go into her story herself about gun violence and about how she was shot in the face, and how she could have put herself into the victim mentality, very much like you were talking about, Bill. You know, the synchronicities of you talking about, you know, feeling like a victim. You know, when I was speaking to Karen, she was saying, well, I wasn't a victim. I'm now changing people's lives. I'm not being part and impacting of supporting people to give them messages because of what she's been through. And it's not acting from this place of being a victim, but it's actually being from a place of being a teacher. So Karen, I'm so pleased all the way from Trinidad and Tobago to actually be here at Hit Talks. So thank you so much, my love, for being with us. And I now give you your 8 minutes.
Hello, everyone. And thank you, Vicky. Thank you to everyone who has joined us in today. And you talked about synchronicity, and that's exactly what was going through my mind when both of the speakers before me spoke, because I thought about, you know, that we have to be grateful for all that we have. And then Bill spoke about bouncing back, and that's exactly what my story is going to be about. And 2 Christmases ago, I fell in love. I fell in love with refinishing an old wooden floor. I spent maybe about a week pulling off all the old layers of dull varnish that was accumulated on the floor. I spent time sanding that floor so that every piece of wood would bring out the character in every piece of wood and make it stand out. I spent time applying a stain or a varnish to the planks to make sure that the eyes of the plank shone brightly. And I did it so that at the end of it all, that old wooden floor would have a brand new life. And this morning, as I stared at the floor, wondering where my Hit Talk would take me, it hit me that that was my story. That was what I had to start this Hit Talk with, because this really illustrated perfectly my motto now in life, which is to transform hurt into hope. And so I believe that we can transform all of our hurts that we have survived. We can transform them through the power of storytelling. So Dr. Chopra spoke about storytelling, and then we heard about gratitude. So again, there's that synchronicity, storytelling and gratitude. And that's what my story is all about. So I believe in the cathartic effect of storytelling. But more than that, more credibly, a lot of extensive research has been done about reflective writing and storytelling, especially work done by James Pennebaker, who is a professor of psychology from the University of Texas. And in addition to his research and my belief, I'm also living proof of the power of storytelling. So as Vicky would have mentioned, 7.5 years ago, during an attempted robbery, I was shot in my face, my chest, and my shoulders. What happened was, and it sounds almost unbelievable, but my chin was completely blown off. I was left with a lower jaw that was useless. My tongue was macerated and was in danger of slipping into my throat and strangling me. And by the time I got to the hospital, I had lost a lot of blood already. For a brief time, I was unable to smile because for some reason, the signals to my brain from my brain just didn't make it. They were sidetracked. I was also unable to eat solid foods for 9 months, and I was unable to speak for 3 weeks. And I'll tell you something, that was extremely frustrating because there I was lying with all these coherent thoughts in my mind and being unable to express them verbally to anyone. But you know, thank goodness I could have written still. And I believe that that's where my writing journey started. And thankfully, due to reconstructive and plastic surgery, I've been able to fix some of my physical injuries. But there were many injuries that were not visible. My family, my friends, my colleagues, and my students all underwent tremendous trauma. I had to sell my car in order to cover the expenses of all my surgeries, and I had to give up my job. Now, after teaching chemistry in public secondary schools for close to 22 years, I was now left wondering what or who I was. And I began to slip into PTSD. Now, up to that point would have been the end of the first part of my life story. And it could have been the end of my story. But just like Bill said, I chose not to be a victim. And instead, what happened was that marked the beginning of the second half of my story. And while it was not an easy process, I think that just as I did with that wooden floor, I started doing with myself. I stripped off all the layers of hurt and pain. I sanded away my insecurities and my inadequacies, and I began that process of transforming myself, of redefining who I had become via the process of reflective writing. Now, reflective writing involves critical thinking. And critical thinking means that you deal with a situation, you think about what has happened, you think about how you felt, how you reacted, what you could have done differently, what you had done in the past that could probably help you to cope now, and what you could probably do in future situations to help you to cope with other crises that might develop. And having thought about all those things, you spend time without stopping, you write for at least 20 minutes or until you are uncomfortable. You just keep writing. And what you do with that writing is, after having gotten all of this stuff out of your head, you can either choose to destroy it or you can share it so that someone else can learn from your lessons. And that's what I chose to do. Now, your situation may be very different than mine was, but let's face it, we are all going through a crisis situation at this point in time. This COVID-19 pandemic has snowballed global challenges, unprecedented in our lifetime, bringing to us challenges with our health, with economies, with the environment, and with so many other things. But the good thing is that, just like I use reflective writing, any one of us can use reflective writing and storytelling, and we can use it to start or to continue thriving into the future, regardless of our circumstance, whether it is this COVID situation or some other situation. And just like the eyes of that wooden floor shone brightly when I refinished it, my eyes shone brightly when I looked into them after the injury. They became my source of hope and inspiration. And that is what brought about the transformation through reflective writing for me. And I'm sure that when you take my story, Dr. Chopra's own, and what Bill shared with us, And with what all the other speakers are going to share this evening, when we take all of that and we put it together, we are going to be able, you are going to be able to bring about transformation through hope and inspiration and reflective writing and storytelling. So thank you very much, Vicky.
You're welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing the story. And you would honestly think, wouldn't you, if you're watching the replay of this or even on live, that every single speaker has been positioned to talk after each other because of the synchronicity of it going through. But please know, and the speakers can back me up on this, is that nobody knows. We literally decide a couple of minutes before of who's going in which order about where they're going to go. So it's the synchronicity, which I believe is the energy, that the amazing energy that we're all in. And when we talk about the energy, you know, the Hit Talks has been created round energetic days. So they're not just, if you notice, Hit Talks are sometimes on a Friday, sometimes on a Wednesday, sometimes they'll be on a Sunday, because they're positioned around energetic days of a sacred calendar. And today is all about wisdom. It's all about new beginnings. It's all about spreading, believe it or not, transformation. So, you know, there's a reason behind everything. And then when we talk about, you know, energies, and we talk about beliefs, and we talk about wisdom, and we also talk about the synchronicities. The next speaker that's coming on as well, we talk about the wisdom, we talk about the synchronicities, and we talk about victims. And it's so easy for all of us, as I say, to actually put ourselves into the victim stage. But my really good friend Corey, who has just written his first book, which is going to be one of many, is one of the persons that I can honestly say that is actually championed not being a victim because of what what's happened through his childhood, especially through the first 7 years of his life. And we know, well, if you don't know, I'm going to share with you, but it's really important that to know that the first 7 years of our life are the years that really do transform us. They're really informative years. So when you have somebody that's really able to take their mask off and share their hope, share their inspiration into the world to help people transform, then we know that we're on the right mission, we're on the right purpose. And that is what Corey is doing. So Corey, thank you so much for being part of Hit Talks. And I would like you to take your 8 minutes, my friend, and share your hope, inspiration, and transformation.
Appreciate it so much. Yeah, I do love the lineup. I'm noticing when one person starts, it kind of leads into the next phase. And with what they were talking about, the awareness of writing it and the power of it. Like when I did do my story, so much came up for me that you can't plan for, you can't actually try to think about until you sit down and you're going through it. And you really realize the capacity that your story can help heal other people. So I would sit down and really had to think about, like, is this something I should share? Is this something that should be out there? And it's so powerful to have someone else's story to relate to. So then when you're going through your own story, you're able to kind of put those things together. So inspiration to me is really just sharing, meeting new people. And where I'm from, that was kind of like the goal. Out west in Arizona, we just love to meet new people. And that was my favorite part because I felt like I could learn just from meeting new people, perspectives, ideas, things that you wouldn't learn from where I'm from. And it gave me a perspective to see that my world wasn't the only world out there. So when I was a child, I was raised in a very unnurturing situation, which is in the book, and it would have led me down a path that people wouldn't say that is the healthiest. But I was able to learn by sharing my story and listening to other people share their stories, or just holding space for other people's traumatic experiences or their knowledge. And it was so important to me to take that with me, that I had to find my own process of learning as well, because of my situation being so young. It was hard to find a space that I could understand someone else. So it was all these challenges of coming together. I had to figure out, how could I be aware of my situation? How could I understand what I have accepted as my situation? because I see other people living differently, but I'm capable of the same thing. So in the story, it was like a gradual learning and realizing everything that happened to me in my past was for a reason and staged itself accordingly to be aware of how life is, who people are, to accept where you're at no matter where you are in your life or what you're doing, and what you have allowed to persuade you that we are human. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to do whatever it is that we actually do, because that's how we learn our lessons. And it was so important to me to try to share that with people, that the book kind of allowed me to do my own writing, where I could just write out my own stories and face those darknesses that I didn't want to before. You know, because we can talk about it, but a lot of us have stories that we don't even like to talk to ourselves about. We try to act like it's not there. And it gave me such a power to tell my story, even to myself, to see that it is okay to say it, to own it, to accept it, and to know that, you know, this actually could help someone else get through a story. When I was listening to the last three, it brought up just a couple of my stories, and it was just so amazing to see how other people can help teach you in ways you don't even realize until later. So I wanted to re-alter my perspective of how I took in people's information. And so from my story, to see how other people respond, I came up with what I call like the 5 A's. And what that is you first have the awareness of your situation and what's happened in the past. Secondly, you have to accept, no matter where you're at, your past had happened. It was for a reason, and it was able to tell you or to teach you something, whether you know it now or you'll find out later. What you have allowed yourself to do, and it's okay. So allowing it to happen, and then alter your perspective. Look at it from a different side of view. So when I have a traumatic experience or something in the past, we usually see a way that we could look at that scenario that, without judgment, what was the reason for it to happen? Why did it happen? What can I learn from it? What can I appreciate? Even if it's where you almost die or something really traumatic happens in the family, it reminds us to take time out to connect, to tell stories, to share. And with that, when you alter your perception and you can see what you're supposed to learn, where you're supposed to be, the ascension process is always going up, where we share stories to inspire, to help each other. And that's how we used to learn. We didn't have a lot of things that were written down. We would just share stories. That's how tales of so many, mythology and all that has lasted, just from storytelling, holding space for each other, learning from each other. And in a time like this right now, it's very important, I think, for all of us to know that no matter where you are or what you're doing, you can always learn something new. You can always find a way to advance. Even at your worst times, you are where you're supposed to be. And what we can do is share stories with each other, share experiences, know that you're not alone out there. And for me, it took a long time, especially being from the background I am with being masculine. Even stopping to take the time to like meditate or find my own story was very difficult, because I had so much programming around how you just bypass the feelings. You bypass that. I don't need to tell nobody my story. I almost don't even need to hear someone else's story, because it's my life. It was so inward that I wasn't open to even receive my own lessons. So it took me reconditioning what I learned from somebody else's habit of, you don't talk about it, you don't have to feel or do anything. You just get through life and deal with it. It almost separates us from connecting with people and sharing stories. And in our first years, they're so important of our conditionings. The ones closest to you can condition you to not even want to hear other people's stories. They can make it to where you push people away. You think you're a type of a person that no one wants to be around or see because of what your family is. So it was so important to me in my youth to hear other people's stories, to just go to the other side of town. I mean, walk for as far as I could, just so I could meet other people, to hear their stories, because it was also a way for me to escape my story, to learn from somebody else that life could be a different way, a more positive way. And it took a little bit for me to even go back to the age where I could really remember it. But then it kind of just all opened up and came to me. We need to take more time to sit with ourselves and ground into our reality, accept it, understand it, and realize that we can always learn something new from someone else. So with that, I appreciate it. Look forward to the rest of the stories, and I look forward.
Thank you so much, Corey. And I just love the openness of the raw and real. Do you know, somebody said to me, and I wasn't going to share this, somebody didn't say to me, somebody sent me an email, and the team will know about this because it really upset me. And they were saying about HIT Talks, we want to know what the speakers are talking about. We want to know exactly what they're talking about. And if they're just talking from the heart, it should be transcribed. We should actually know what they're talking about, and it should be given to us beforehand to decide whether or not we want to come onto HIT Talks at all. And I was like, oh my gosh, but that's really not what we're about. And the stories that we're sharing here, and being raw and real about everything. I just want to kind of have a space where you can share these stories, share these wisdom, and be able to share these inspirational messages without us having to know exactly every single line that you're going to say, because I know from speaking to Corey and from Karen it's just come from, and from Bill and from Sanjiv, but it just comes from the heart as it is there at the time. And when we talk about synchronicity, but the way that it flows, I was just talking to the team in the background then about going on to the next speaker who's going into the UK, who's in the UK. Now, Louise George, who is our next speaker, she was going to be a speaker of our last HIT Talks, but in the last minute, the last hour, she was unable to because of sickness. But then everything worked out absolutely perfectly, because I believe that everything happens for a reason. And then she's come in to this episode of HIT Talks to be able to share her story, not just in life, but also in business. So Louise, I'm so thankful that you're actually here in this episode. Thank you for being with us. And I'd like to give you your 8 minutes, my love.
Thanks so much, Vicky. I am beyond excited to be here, and I'm so glad that it's worked out and I've been able to join you for this episode. I am overwhelmed with gratitude for all of the speakers who have already shared their story. And right now, you may be able to hear a little bit in my voice. It's shaking a little bit. My palms are a bit sweaty and my heart is racing. I'm sharing this because this is unusual for me. I have been a film actor for about 20 years now and a TV presenter, and I've been speaking on stages and coaching for many years as well. I don't get nervous very often. The reason I am feeling that right now is because I've had to wait. I've had to sit and listen to other people. And when we're waiting, the anticipation builds up. Maybe you remember this feeling from a time in your life as well. Maybe it's a similar situation where you've had to speak on a stage or on a video or on a panel. There was a time I would have run away from that. I would have tried to escape that feeling of unease in my body. I would have labeled it as fear or even excitement, which is, can be a version of fear. What I have learned to do over the years is become friends with that feeling. And that adrenaline rush, those sweaty palms, the heart beating a little faster, I now know is energy. There are a lot of eyeballs watching us as we speak on this screen. And if you're standing on a stage, same thing, there's a lot of energy coming at us. And what's happening is almost like our body's been plugged into the mains. Our body is giving us an extra boost of energy so that we can meet that gorgeous energy coming at us. And that was such a relief for me. When I first learned about that and heard about that from one of my acting coaches, I was like, that's great. This isn't fear, it's energy. It's my gorgeous body meeting the energy that's coming at me as well. I wanted to share some of that with you, because also what's happening with that energy that's rising is because we're in our heads. And that's exactly what's happened to me in the waiting. The longer we wait for something, the more we can get in our heads and think about, well, what should I say? Their story's better than mine. Maybe I should change it and say something. And so that anticipation builds up and that energy builds. But it's really learning to be comfortable with that. And I love something that Corey just said, and I wrote it down actually, and that is to sit with ourselves and ground into our reality. I absolutely love that, Corey, because that is really connected to what I would like to speak about, and that is heart-centered leadership. I received an email from one of my private clients. I'm also a life and business coach, and one of my private clients sent me an email yesterday, and it broke my heart a little bit, because I feel that not just from her, from what she shared, but the world as a whole right now. The world is going through a huge transformation. And for many people, that feels like chaos, that feels like uncertainty. And the message that my client sent me was that of hopelessness. That broke my heart. Her feeling hopeless. And I know she's not alone. So many people in the world are feeling that right now. And perhaps you're one of them. And what I really want to share in the few minutes that I have left is hope. And that's what HIT Talks is all about: hope, inspiration, transformation. When we get overwhelmed, when we feel so uncertain, when we feel the chaos, again, it's because we're in our heads. So just as I shared my palms being sweaty and my heart racing, and I could label that as fear, that's what happens to us when we're paying too much attention to the outside world. When we are consuming all of the information coming at us, and that's a lot. This year especially, we are in information overload. The news, social media, our friends, family, society. There's a lot of new information coming at us, a lot of energy coming at us that maybe we don't have the energy to meet, especially if we're stuck in our heads, because those voices just go round and round, telling us all of the kind of the fear-based thinking. And a lot of the work that I do with my clients is helping them to get out of here and drop into here. So just as Corey was saying, being able to really sit with yourself and feel those feelings, really be present more than consuming the information. Most people are operating from here, running their businesses from their head, running their life from their head. I call it head braining your way to success. This is a very powerful machine. This is a very powerful intelligence, but it isn't our only intelligence. Our entire body is receiving and processing information. And in fact, we have two other major brains in our body: our heart and our gut. Others as well, but the three main intelligence: head, heart, gut. I would invite you from this point forwards, especially if you've been feeling the chaos, any overwhelm, any fear, is to spend more time dropping into your heart. You can do this in as little as 2 minutes a day, just closing your eyes, sitting in stillness and silence and asking, what is it I truly desire? Do you have a message for me today? So actually actively communicating with your heart intelligence, and it will speak to you. You have to be patient and listen and spend that time with your body, with your heart, placing your hand on your heart if it helps you to connect, but actually asking your heart to communicate with you. Your heart is in fact communicating with you all the time, but the voice of our heart is much softer than the voice of our head and our ego especially. And that's how you know the difference. This is often harsh. It tells us what we can't do, what we should do, all of the fear-based thoughts and the not good enough and the worries. This voice is with compassion and kindness and love. It's softer. It feels good. So if you are wanting to know your next step, what it is that you really want, your true purpose, comes from here. And a way to help you remember this is heart first. And I call this the CEO. Your heart is the CEO. This is your intelligence responsible for what you truly desire and your visions. And then gut next. Your gut is the board, right? So we want to consult our gut. What do we need to feel safe, to take action? Because this is responsible. This is the intelligence responsible for our fight, flight, freeze. So what do I need to feel safe? What do I need to take action on this? And then finally, head. This is your EA, your executive assistant. So your heart is your CEO, Your gut is your board, your head is your assistant. So we need to ask, listen to our heart, follow your gut, direct your head. And when we feel the fear, when we get caught up in the chaos, when we're feeling hopeless, it's because we're doing it the wrong way around. We're listening to our head and not listening to our body. So if I can leave you with anything, it is to spend time in stillness and silence every day, paying attention to your body, speaking to your body, and listening for the amazing guidance, because your soul is communicating with you from your heart, and your guardian angels are looking after you through the intelligence of your gut. And a tool that I would like to leave you with is balanced breathing. Breathing for just 2 to 5 minutes a day will bring your nervous system into balance. And what we're looking for is breathing in slowly and steadily to the count of 6, breathing out slowly and steadily to the count of 6, and keeping that going for a couple of minutes at least. And you can drop into that at multiple times through the day when you need to as well. My greatest wish for you is that you remember who you really are, what you truly desire, and that you move forwards and create from that place. Regardless of what's happening outside, your peace comes from within. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Oh, as you say about the sweaty palms, I'm sure we have actually all been there with the sweaty palms. And I do have to say just about the synchronicity, as you were just saying about the breathing and balance. It was, again, just a couple of minutes before that I actually messaged the team and I said, I feel with everything that's going on with the conversations that we're having, that at the end, put the quantum balance screen on, and I'm just going to do a little bit of quantum healing and a little bit of a guided meditation called quantum balance, which is the breathing that you've just spoken about. And, you know, it's just, you know, the synchronicities of everything kind of flowing through. So we are going to be doing a couple of minutes of that at the end. And the other synchronicities that we're talking about, as you say about the heart, and we say about the gut, and we say about the brain as well, and making sure that we're mastering everything at different times depending on what we're doing. But we talk about the heart, we talk about the brain, and we talk about the gut, but it's all housed by our body. And it's all housed by our body. So what we actually put into our body, how we look after this vessel that houses our soul and houses our heart and our gut and our brain, is fundamentally important. And I couldn't make it up by saying that the next speaker is just a master in body work, in breath work, in food that we put into our body, into the rawness, into just using beauty. She's from Costa Rica, and I've spent a lot of time with her and her husband, Dr. Greg, who's also been on previous talks of previous episodes of Hit Talks. And when we talk about beauty, using food, herbs, superfoods, all of also the parts of the foods that we eliminate from our diet as well. You know, I have turned into a little bit of a health freak since I've known these two. So it's just kind of come into sync so perfectly that Hilary is the next speaker that we're going to be talking to, who's going to be able to share with us her story and how she really is inspiring our next generation to be able to eat well, because it's fundamentally important, as I say, not just about our soul, our heart, our gut and our brain, but also our body and our vessel. So Hilary, all the way from Costa Rica, thank you so much, my love, for being with us. And I now give you your 8 minutes.
Thank you everyone. It's so beautiful, all of your stories. I had tears, my heart was pounding. It was so beautiful listening and preparing to speak as well. So for me, what's always worked for me as a young child is walking the beauty way. And it's a beautiful Navajo way of living. Just, you know, there's so much negative in our world, but finding the beauty. And I had beautiful examples of this as a child. I had a great set of parents and my grandparents, and my grandmother especially. She didn't have an easy life at all. She lost a husband, she lost a baby, she lost a son when he was 20, but you would never know it because she always sang songs, had the biggest amount of faith, always had a smile on her face, and she was always eating healthy. I remember going to her house and she'd bake brownies, but they weren't brownies I'd have at a friend's. They were like tasted healthy, and I really liked that taste because the way it made me feel, and you had to eat it slower and it wasn't a sugar rush, and it filled you. So I guess for me, she was a huge example of that. Plus, I was born wanting to find like the fountain of youth, like the food for immortality and extension of well-being. So for me, it's been holding that way of beauty, but also in the kitchen as well as in the mind, in the way I try to speak, just trying to be aware, but definitely in the kitchen. So when I create something, I want to create the healthiest version of it, whether it's raw or whether it's like slowly cooked. But again, just adding that beauty into food, and it's kind of contagious because people will consume the food and find that they enjoy the taste, that they feel amazing after, that their energy levels are high, that their spirit feels nurtured. There's actually like such a thing, because I like to co-create and concoct things that I once loved as a child, like say a Snickers candy bar, like achieving that taste. And when I can get the essence of it, but from the healthiest ingredients, it is so healing on like a spirit level, that it brings you back to that childlike base, but it also, you know, you're getting all of your minerals and vitamins and everything. And I love seeing kids in the kitchen trying new recipes, trying to make it, you know, karma-free without using ingredients from animals and things, and without using such high processed sugar. And it's so beautiful when they can share it, and it's contagious, and they share it with their friends. They're like, oh, what's this? And healthy food is becoming cool again. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Yes, because we are what we eat, think, and drink. So why not have it be beautiful? And even saying this, I had gone on my raw journey. I had been raw, I believe, for a year, and I had healed myself as well. I'd gotten like an autoimmune disease while I was in the last stages of my pregnancy. And anyway, it went beautiful. I was able to help heal myself and had a beautiful birth. And then a month later, I get news that my dad is sick and going to be getting chemotherapy and trying to heal his way. And sadly, he died a few months later. And again, I was raw, so I wasn't eating, or I was only, you know, eating veggies and fruits and things. And normally when people are grieving, you know, food is such a big thing. They eat unhealthy or they drink or whatnot. But for me, I was going through it in the beauty way. I had to deal with the grief, the loss, the heartache, all of that. And I have to say, the healthy foods really, really helped me, because just in aloe, there's so much ormus in it. So when you're having aloe, it's like awakening and decalcifying parts of your body, and even unlocking magic. So I wrote a lot of stories and sang and just tried to really process the grief. So saying that the beauty way can be in the good times, it can be in the hard times. And right now it's more needed on the planet, with so much heart-wrenching information becoming uncovered, so many new laws and things, that we really have to guide our way through the beauty way so it can be contagious. And holding our hearts for people as well, if we have a different viewpoint for them, just having full compassion. Like, there's no need to disagree. Like, we need to hold one another in such deep love and reverence, and just honoring where we're all at, you know? So I'm not a dogmatic kind of vegetarian person. I'm very much easy and accessible, and yeah, so we can use this way of beauty, you know, in the kitchen, outside of the kitchen, and it's totally, yes, dropping into our hearts is so needed. Yeah, and it's a great way if you can, you know, have a juice and just sit and meditate and just go in and see how you feel from that juice, or test out a new recipe and introduce it to your family. It's a really beautiful thing to be able to share the food with all of your love and thoughts. And it might take a little more time, but it's totally, totally worth it.
Thank you so much, Hilary, for sharing. Honestly, I have to say, with all the work that you do for people out there with, you know, the raw food and the brownies, you know, the recipes for your brownies are just absolutely divine. And as you say, it's, you know, with everybody, it's a ripple effect. It makes a difference to how you feel. It makes a difference to how you heal. And so if you're out there wishing to heal any childhood wounds, or you're wishing to heal anything, then the food that you put into your body has a big impact on how you heal, as we all know. And I do, and you know, and I'm grateful. So we go back to the happiness, and we go back through the beginning of the show when we were talking about gratitude, because I've got 2 teenage children who is 17 and 19, and now they're 99% dairy free, mostly vegan, and, you know, training, and, you know, there's almond milk throughout the house constantly now, and everything that's coming through, the superfoods, all the food that's coming through. But it starts with change. It starts from, as the speakers were saying earlier, is about changing ourselves first, and the ripple effect, and doing it from the right space. So yeah, food has a real importance to it. And I love the way, Hilary, that you say that you can have rosy red lips for some beetroot as well. So that's the thing now. So I'm going to stop buying lipstick now and just having lovely beetroot lipstick from going forward now. So thank you so much for being here with us. It's absolutely appreciated massively, all the way from Costa Rica. So we are traveling the world, aren't we? So, you know, Trinidad, Tobago, and we've been in Indiana, and we've been in New York, and we've been in Boston so far, and we've been in the UK, and we are now going to South Africa. So I know that's a little bit of a fib, because Jan actually isn't in South Africa at the moment. When I spoke to him, he's come across to Scotland, but he's been in South Africa for the last 4.5 years. And again, when you connect with people that, you know, is talking about wanting to make a difference, and Jan is one of these people that wants to make a difference, and he's making a difference with what I liked about Jan when we had the conversation, when we were talking about energy and we were talking about human behavior. And that's the thing. And so everybody here, we're talking about change, we're talking about energy, we're talking about, you know, the heart, the soul, the gut, the brain, you know, the behavior of how we are as beings here. So I'm pleased that you're in Scotland. I know it's cold there, Jan, but I'm pleased that you're actually here on Hit Talks to share your 8 minutes. And I'd like to give you your 8 minutes, and thank you for being here.
Right. But for me, yeah, it's just a privilege to not just be here, but to listen to so many amazing speakers already. And it's interesting to see where all this has taken us. And, you know, with hope, inspiration, and transformation. And I love every single word. And when you talked about, you know, we're doing it at a certain time of the week or of the month because of the calendar, and we get energy. I mean, I wake up every morning and then there is energy, because there's energy all around us all the time, and we just have to take from it what we want. And for me, it is so important. And I will talk a little bit more into this as well. But, you know, when we look at experience, the experiences we've got, and so far in our lives, you know, we get them from events and from all kinds of things, especially when we're young, through curiosity. And I've always been a very curious kind of person, and many stories I could tell you, but that would take a lot more than 8 minutes. I mean, when Vicky asked, can you talk for 8 minutes? I said, my problem is to stop talking, because I came out of the womb talking, and I haven't stopped since. But I've had many experiences, and I just want to share one when I was very young, 3-year-old, that's several years ago, as you can imagine. And I was always curious, and we lived above a shop, a music shop. Now, that was when we had records, these round vinyl things. The young ones might not remember them. They might now use them as frisbees. But we had a music shop, and I was always curious, and I used to wander into the shop quite often to find out what was happening. And one day, my dad had a little workshop in the back of the shop, and I wandered in there, and I was rummaging about, and you know, I for whatever reason, and maybe no coincidence, for whatever reason, I picked up 2 nails. And I wandered back in the back of the shop, and I was always fascinated with electricity too, the way how you switch something on and all of a sudden the light goes on somewhere, and you have another switch and a Hoover goes on, or you've got another switch and the music starts playing. It was fascinating. So I see this socket now. I came originally from the Netherlands, as you might hear from my accent, and I saw this socket low down in the back of the shop. So I planted myself firmly in front of it, and I had 2 nails in my hand. Now, our sockets in Holland have 2 round pins. I think you're getting the message. But as I said, I was curious. So I sit there and I take one of these nails and I put it smoothly into that hole, and it fits like a glove. Now, I don't need to tell you what I was going to do next. I think you get that as well. But I picked the other nail up and I put that in the other hole, and nothing. Now, I was curious, but I had no idea what to expect. But I was a little bit disappointed that nothing happened, because I see all these things going on with lights, with hoovers, with music and all that. So because nothing else was happening, I thought I'll take them both out, and I took them both out at the same time. Now, when I did that, all of a sudden, in South Africa, we call it load shedding, but everything went dark. I got thrown back about 2 meters. My lights went out as well. And by the time I came round again, I was kind of a little bit dazed, to say the least, but I got more than the shock from the electricity. I was curious, and people said, well, did you stop being curious? I certainly never didn't stop being curious, but I can tell you one thing for sure. I certainly never did that again. But curiosity gets us things. And, when we look at life itself and the experience we've had, how they affected us and what we've done with them. When I look at my subconscious belief system and how my brain has been molded and modeled so far, or not, as the case may be, that's open to debate. But everything that has happened has started with a thought, which I have allowed into my head, which we all allow into our heads. And we need to become aware of it, because we have a process of transformation that we work with, and one of the sentences that always comes up in every time we talk about a value is thoughts become actions, actions become habits, and habits become our destiny. Now, this is so important, because we're talking about energy, we talk about hope, we talk about inspiration, and we certainly talk about transformation. And how can that ever happen if you don't know what you're doing with your life? If you're still going through life and you're just existing? And quite too often we look at our lives and we look at things that we should be doing, yet already we tell ourselves we can't, because we look at the results we've had so far in our lives, and we can't, never mind the inspiration, we certainly can't be inspired, because we have no hope of ever doing anything like that, because we have seen the results. And if you think about it, if you've heard of the stick man, then it is very simple. It's not easy, but very simple, because I already said everything starts with a thought, and thoughts become actions. So if everything starts with a thought, everything you see around you, the clothes, the chairs you sit on, the gadgets we speak into, so then thoughts come into your head, they go into your subconscious, and eventually they become habits, and you actually start doing things from there. So the results, it's as simple as that. The results you've got just now is because of the thoughts you've been thinking in the past. So that means that the thoughts you have just now should be able to get you different results, unless you never think. George Bernard Shaw said a long time ago about thinking: 2% of people think they think, 3% think they think, and 95% would rather die than think. Too many of us mistake mental activity with thinking, so we don't really think about it. But if we use that idea that thoughts become ideas, and we actually get results from there, then surely if we want to change our results, we just need to change our thinking. And how often don't we do that? And how often do we complain about the situation we find ourselves in, and we don't ask questions of the person in the mirror and do something about the situation we're in? Now, for me, it would always have been easy to fall into that same trap that I cannot do anything. Yet our brains we don't even know yet what the limits of our brains are, and we are unlimited. Yet every day we talk and we walk as if there is a limit to anything we can do. Surely we should turn that around. And for me, it was easy to actually fall in that same trap, because I was bullied as a kid. But I became, and I could have said, well, my life is bad like this, it'll never get any better. But of course it got better, and it's getting better every single day, because growth is a day thing, an everyday thing, not a once every so often thing. But I became hopeful, and I decided to change my path and become intentional in everything I was doing. And it was funny what somebody said, because the thought that came to me today is of the thought that the quote I'm going to give you next is that there are 2 important days in your life. the day you were born and the day you discover why. You know, that's why it's so important to discover your passion, your purpose, your why. Each and every one of us has a path to follow, a journey and a destiny. What is your destiny? You don't want to just go through life and exist. There is more to each and every one of us. Everyone, you matter. We all matter. And we will inspire ourselves when we live our lives with passion. You know, that inspiration will come from within. If we know what we get up for every morning, there is no need to set an alarm clock. Because when we live a life of significance, you know, we know that by the time it is going to happen to us all, we pass away, but at least we can look back and say, yes, my life mattered. And your life matters right now. You know, there's too many people, they go to work on a Monday and the only thing they look forward to is Friday. And it's a very sad thing to be in. It's a very sad situation because the week is just to fill in the gaps between the weekends. And even in the weekends, they're just complaining and doing things, mundane things, and they don't really live. Where is that hope, that passion you need more now than ever before? I talk about leadership as well, and Napoleon said many years ago, of course, leaders are sellers of hope. What are you selling? And that is very important, because if you really want to transform, there is a quote we use as well in the transformational process, where it says transformation always begins inside each and every one of us, the person that looks in the mirror every morning. But we need to start asking ourselves some very important questions. We quite often don't ask others any questions, yet we blame everybody else. But the only person that can assure that tomorrow will be better is the person that looks in the mirror. The only way we can assure that tomorrow will be better if we do something about ourselves that ensures that we do something to improve ourselves today. And, you know, and that is why it's very powerful, because it is so very important that we don't waste our lives. You know, where there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. But there is no power in the present for most of it because we've got no hope. And for many of us, we need to sow more hope. We need to sell more hope. We need to give other people more hope. And we need to inspire others to look for their internal transformation, for the things that they need to do, the things they feel inside themselves, the things that are powerful. And, you know, I want to finish. I know my time is nearly up, so I want to finish with this little story about a wise old man at the bottom of the Himalayas. And there was this man, a wise old man. He lived in a village at the bottom of the Himalayas. And he was always right. He had so much wisdom inside him. And there was two young boys, and it really peeved them ever so little that they could, whatever they tried, they could never get him wrong. So one day, one of the boys comes to the other. He is so excited because he says, you know, today it's going to happen. The other boy said, today is going to happen what? He's going to be wrong today. He says, he's never been wrong before. But this boy had never given up hope, and that's how important it is, because when you have hope, you keep trying. And he did try, and he says, you know, I'm going to tell you today he's going to be wrong. And he was so excited. He said, well, tell me, what is your thought? He says, well, I'm going to ask him a question. And he says, the question is that I'm going to have a bird behind my back. And I'm going to ask him if the bird is alive or dead. And if he says the bird is alive, I'll go, sorry, bird lovers, that's only a story. He says, and I'll show him the dead bird. But if he says the bird is dead, I'll open my hands and the bird will fly away. And so surely, this is the day he'll be wrong. And they got excited. And, you know, when you've got hope that something is going to happen, you are inspired and you get a spring in your step. And they went to that village at the bottom of the Himalayas. And they knew today was going to be the day they were going to transform their lives. And that of the old wise man as well, because he's got to be wrong today. So they got into the village and they knocked on the door of the wise man and said, wise man. And he came to the door and says, yes, young man, what can I do for you today? He says, wise man. And they're looking at each other because surely it's going to happen today. And they're looking at each other and it says, wise man, I have got a question for you. And he says, sure, ask away. And they hardly can contain themselves and they don't even want to look at each other anymore. But the one says, wise man, I have a bird behind my back. What I would like you to tell me, is the bird alive or is it dead? And, you know, they're getting their excitement up. It's going to happen now. And the old man is thinking for a bit and he strokes his chin. And then he says, I know you have a bird behind your back. But whether it lives or whether it dies is in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. When people are watching this, when people are actually hearing the replay, when actually people are here watching live, and you talk about hope, and you talk about inspiration, and you talk about transformation, and maybe you are in a job that you hate going to. Maybe you don't wake up in the morning with an alarm clock. Sorry, you wake up in the morning with an alarm clock, and you know you don't feel inspirational. You know, because there's a lot of people out there that are in that space at the moment. And, you know, every single person here is spreading messages to you of hope, inspiration, and transformation, that the path might not be easy, but it's feeling the path as well. And it's actually being surrounded by the right people, because the more that you can surround yourself with the right people, the more that you can actually surround yourself with people that believe in you, that have faith in you, that actually trust you and are there to support you, and to share inspirational stories of hope and transformation, then it'll help you on your journey. And I wanted to add that in because there's a lot of messages that I get about people that aren't as energetic, that get up in the morning without an alarm clock, and it's feeling that, and it's really, as I say, it's really bringing all of that together, which brings together, which synchronicity brings together the next speaker, which comes in line with this, which I say couldn't be made up, because this is somebody that I believed in before she believed in herself, and she is just she's a goddess. She is somebody that has not just done amazing things in the business world, but her heart is more about helping people. And it always has been, even within business, but more about on a spiritual journey. When, you know, she just feels people. She's just got this energy of wanting to put hope into people's life, to really help them transform. And whether or not she does that through herbs and through food, but she's doing that through sound, but she's doing that, I would say, because of this, because she's got the heart to inspire people, she's got the heart to actually want to transform people. So I'm really excited to bring Rachel onto our platform, for her to be able to share her hope, her inspiration, and her transformation. So my love, thank you so much for being with us, and you now have 8 minutes to share.
What an absolute honour. Thank you so much, Vicky. And thank you everybody else as well. It's magical to hear everybody's stories. And thank you, Jan, for your enlightening enthusiasm. I think, yeah, I felt like a rocket stick was behind me when I was listening to you. But I think it is intrinsic, isn't it? When we know what we love, and I love inspiring people. In many different ways, and it's so lovely to hear all the stories of how people find their trueness in life, their love, and it could be many different loves. I think life is a bit like a tree. You know, you go up one branch and then you discover something else, and what you thought you were going to actually leads you in a completely different direction. But everything that you've learned previous to then actually really sets you up for it. I love all the true, the raw, and the love that everybody shares. It reminds me also of a story of a lovely old gentleman that I met. He was in his late 80s, and he discovered his love, and it was singing. He could never sing. His wife had told him that he couldn't sing, and he was always singing out of tune. I met him in a church behind where I lived, and he was learning to play the bells. And I don't know if you've ever learnt to play bells in a church, but it's the scariest thing and the most active I've ever seen old people. And it was like a gym. It was amazing. But you could get shot up to the ceiling if you didn't, you know, hold it in the right way. But he told me a story that he'd heard on the radio, that everybody can sing. And it was just that they hadn't learnt to sing properly. And he decided after his wife died, sadly, that he was going to get some singing lessons. And for 2 years, he diligently went along to these lessons and learnt to sing. And when I met him, he was just about to sing in front of a huge audience. I was so proud and I was so excited. It was almost like tears in my eyes of excitement for him. And he sang in front of this audience, and then he died of a stroke very shortly after, but he, I suppose in a cheesy way, he didn't die with the music inside of him. And I look at my nephew before he was 1 year old, and he's fascinated by things that pivot and things, everything is intrinsic within us. There's no mistake that we love what we love. I've had an interesting life, definitely. I have had lots of experiences, and I love to overcome problems and challenges, and I wanted to share a few things, and I wasn't sure, what was going to be right for everybody. But at university, I took over the Dyslexic Institute. I was told when I was very young that I was so dyslexic that I wasn't going to amount to anything. And it made me really feisty. And so I've had kind of a cracker in my life, just, I will do that. And one thing I learned that I thought was fascinating, that wasn't really taught to anybody, was exercises and they're all in a book called The Brain Gym. But I think really, especially now in today's life, there's so many things going on. There's spinning exercises. So anything that makes you dizzy, apart from alcohol, actually makes you brainier. So literacy, memory, and so literacy, memory and mathematics, you become above average. And anything that actually makes you spin, so throwing a ball from hand to hand, but watching the ball. There's wobbling on a wobble board and closing your eyes, but they're all things that make you giggle. And, we don't laugh enough generally in life. And I think it's so important to laugh and to love, because it's infectious. Consciousness is contagious. It truly is. And when I skip down along the beach, I can see people smiling, and it's so lovely to be able to bring a smile to anybody's face. It's something that I do love. Vicky, I don't know how long I've been, but I totally forgot to press my start button on my counter. But I suppose on the alkalizing side of things, it's so lovely to be able to alkalize your body, and there's so many ways in which we can do it, and we can do it through mind, meditation, or prayer. You can do it through your body, just by breathing, and Wim Hof has some amazing ways in which to do that. Sound and vibration, so we can change the structure of our water. Water has memory, just as all our cells do as well. Breathing, water, and food as well. So the raw food, the beautiful water that we can drink, it's all incredibly good for us. But I think inspiration, joy, hope, and transformation, absolutely lovely. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Rachel. Do you know, I could just listen to you talk all the time, because as you know, I just love your accent, and and I can actually vouch for Rachel skipping down the beach, because many times I'll get videos or voicemails as she's skipping along the beach. And laughter, how often do we laugh, and how often do we actually make a point of over laughing? I remember my daughter's friends coming round once, and I think I'd had a coaching session, and it was on the same thing about having laughter being medicine. And so I went into her room and just started laughing, you know, it's like belly laughing. And she was like, "Mummy, will you get out? You're really embarrassing." But then all her friends started laughing madly. And then you know, and so it ended up that there was a group of us just all laughing naturally when it started from, you know, when we just think sometimes, how often do we do that? Because sometimes we're a little bit too serious, aren't we? So again, on top of anything else, as well as bringing some hope and inspiration and some transformation into the world, let's bring a little bit more laughter. So maybe on one of the next episodes, we'll have some laughing therapy, and Rachel can do some laughing therapy with her sound bowls or something else like that. Maybe we'll do that. So again, everybody, it's just been so inspirational, and you know, and for the flow of everybody just flowing through with the messages of the hope, of the inspiration, of the transformation, that, as I say, it couldn't be made up. And from the bottom of my heart, you know, I'm so grateful for every single one of you. And so what I'd like to do now, just for a few minutes at the end, is I'd just like to do a little bit of breath work and a little bit of just some meditation, just to really ground this into your system. It's just something that on occasions I like to do at the end of the HIT Talks. So if you'd like to, you know, a lot of people like to turn their cameras off. So if you'd like to turn your cameras off and just put yourself into a nice relaxing space so you don't have me looking at you, it's entirely up to you. So everyone is muted. So I just invite you now just to take some deep breaths. And just some of the words that you've heard during this HIT Talks of hope, of inspiration, of transformation. You know, which ones have actually soaked into the cells of your body? You know, just take some deep breaths in and some deep breaths out. Just soft and slow. Just feeling gratitude, feeling happiness. Feeling the energies around your body. Just feeling your breath as it's going in and it's going out. Taking the time to actually just listen to your breath. As you breathe in and as you breathe out. Just knowing that you're in the right place at the right time. Whatever journey you're on, it's divine timing. Your destination is set. It's the path, which is the journey to enjoy. To seek the people that can bring you the hope, the inspiration, and the transformation for your journey. Because every single one of ours is different. And so if you're just breathing in and out softly. Just feeling the vibration in every single cell of your body. Just feeling the energy around you as you're breathing. Just feeling your breath going up and down and just being aware, being still, being in the moment. Just breathing in softly and gently. With positive thoughts. If any thoughts are in your field that no longer serve you, just breathe them out and let them go. Just knowing that when we tap into every layer of our being, or our physical, our emotional, our energetic, and our spiritual bodies, and we become whole, we become one. And just take a deep breath. And then whenever you're ready, you can just bring yourself back into the room. So welcome. Thank you to everybody for being on the live episode of Hit Talks, and for everybody watching the replay. Our next episode of Hit Talks is again on a fantastic energy day, which is on the 8th of September. And the energy on the 8th of September is about growth. It's every single day, as you notice, it's a 13-day cycle that we follow. So it's again about growth. It's again about inspiration. We're going to share more with you on the next episode about the energies as well. But again, thank you for everybody for supporting Hit Talks, everyone that's watching the replay. And I would like to say thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Bye-bye.